Hey guys, Welfare. Welcome to the Week 9 Team Builder for Sarrfnar, aka Mr. Luminian of the Veilstone City Volbeats. Now, as you can see on the Team Builder screen, the opponent's team is pretty interesting, but it has a very glaring weakness. Going through the team, we have M-CharizardY as a wall breaker. You have Clefable as a good support utility, defensive mon. You have Gliscor as a good defensive mon. Um, very bulky. Zapdos, very bulky as a defogger. Chestnut, very bulky as a physical attacker. Doublite, very bulky physically on the physical side. Then you have things like Tyrantrum, offensive mon. Uxie, another support alongside Clefable. Scavalier, very bulky on the physical side. Um, Regice, very bulky on, I believe, the physical side as well. Shiftry, it's just Shiftry, I guess. Generally tends to be a little more offensive, and then Floatzel as well is a little bit more offensive. Now, if you haven't seen the weakness yet in this team, um, I'm not teaching you guys properly how to team build and look at teams. This team has a glaring weakness to ice, which Sarrfnar has indeed noticed. However, he hasn't really been able to fix it with free agents and stuff, so Mamoswine is going to do approximately 10 bajillion damages in this match this week. So, Mega Charizard Y is pretty frail. Gliscor 4 times weak, Zapdos 2 times weak, Chestnut 2 times weak, Tyrantrum 4 times weak, Shiftry 2 times weak. 5 out of his 12 mons are vulnerable to ice, so we're definitely taking advantage of that. Starting off with Mamoswine. As you see, it's a Life Orb Mamoswine today, simply because Life Orb Mamoswine is straight power against his team. Um, Icicle Crash with a Life Orb set. Um, Basically, the stab power of this, 2 shots Floatzel with a resisted hit. So, um, does an absurd amount of damage to Charizard Y. The combination of Icicle Crash and Ice Shard actually one-shots Charizard Y, so if he happens to try and switch into an Icicle Crash with it, we do, I think, something like 65 to 85% or 75 to 85% with Icicle Crash, and then Ice Shard does almost half, so just obliterates Charizard Y on the switch. Also does quite a number on things like Gliscor, Zapdos, Chestnut. Everything that you would seem to think gets destroyed by it does indeed get destroyed by it. Um, Now, relevant of note is the fact that Ice Shard by itself won't kill Tyrantrum, and we do have to be worried that it might be scarfed, so we do have to weaken it ahead of time. Um, but that's why we have other team members, so we're not worried about that. So, EV spread, we have 220 speed, specifically to, well, originally it was to outspeed Chestnut. Chestnut hits 249. The problem is 370 is a better life orb number than 371. So, as it turns out, it just happens to be easier to set the life at 370 and then just add another speed to put it up to 251 instead of 250. We might mize a speed tie or something like that on things he might not fully invest in speed, things like Tyrantrum or stuff like that. But overall, I mean, pretty standard. Enough speed to outspeed every relevant threat that he needs to, for the most part. Going by my notes, it doesn't outspeed a fast Shiftry, like a timid Shiftry or something like that, or any max speed invested Shiftry for that matter. Doesn't outspeed. We also don't outspeed a Jolly Tyrantrum. We outspeed an Adamant, but not a Jolly Tyrantrum, which is pretty relevant depending on if he's scarfed or not. We do outspeed. Um, I would imagine we would outspeed Gliscor and Zapdos simply because I don't expect either one of those to be high speed investment. Um, Keeping in mind that Zapdos and Gliscor both do hit pretty high speed tiers if they are speed invested, but again, I'm expecting them to be bulky, probably bulky physical on both sides or both of them. So definitely not too worried about outspeeding those. I'm pretty confident I'll be able to. Now, The other two moves are Earthquake and Knockoff. Knockoff is a concession of the fact that we want to be able to switch into Uxi's Thunder Waves, and Uxie barely 2 hits KO this if it has max special attack investment with Psychic and stuff. So we want to be able to get a knockoff on it, or possibly just use knockoff and get something on the switch. We have Earthquake, specifically for the things that resist ice, just as a second stab. Things like Scavalier, for instance. Floatzel, if we can guarantee the prediction, we can get that. Doublade, obviously resists ice, so we want to be able to hit it with Earthquake, although realistically we're not going to be staying in on Doublade because being so physically bulky, especially with that Eviolite, Earthquake isn't even going to do a ton to it. We really got to hit it on the special side, so we'll get to that in a minute. But Mamoswine is going to be doing work. In the test matches I've done, Mamoswine has obliterated everything. So I'm pretty confident that this is going to do a ton of damage to Sarrfnar. Rhyperior is going to be our Rock Setter this week. We have Stealth Rock, Rock Blast, Poison Jab, and Ice Punch as a set of moves on it with leftovers. I debated bringing the Anti-Grass Berry. I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head. I don't use resistant berries that often, so I don't have them memorized yet. But I debated on that for a long time before I realized that even with a resistance berry, CharizardY still does a pretty much still almost one-shots us. So it's better for us to just use Rhyperior as a physical tank and just rely on bulk to switch into physical hits. Things like non-stab Floatzel moves, Crunch, and things like that. Things like Doublades attacks. Things like Gliscor Acrobatics or something like that. Things like Tyrantrum Head Smashes. We need something physical to stand in the way of that type of stuff in order to reliably counterattack. So that's kind of what we're doing, but more importantly, I'm using this as a lead. We honestly don't really give a crap about anything that he leads with. I'm expecting him to lead Uxie, to be honest, to spam Thunderwave. He seems to be doing that pretty much every game that he's played in. So, I mean, that's kind of what I expect, but if he leads with something else, I'm fine with that too. I mean, as long as we get rocks up. The only thing that really hurts this is if he leads something like Shiftry, which he could do. He uses his Shiftry very aggressively, which I gotta give him credit for. So we do have to be careful about that. But otherwise, I don't really give a crap. I'm just gonna be turn one rocks. Which is almost why I debated on just putting a focus sash on this and just saying, well, I just want rocks up. I don't really care. But um, our team does so much damage to CharizardY that if we don't get rocks up, it's not the end of the world. So we don't have to go so far as to put a focus sash on this. I'd rather use him for a more well-rounded utility. In terms of moves, Rock Blast is stab, of course. Rock Blast at 2 hits, which is the minimum hit, does about 400% damage to Charizard Y. So, yeah, I don't think we have to worry about using Stone Edge and missing more often. Rock Blast can do the job. Poison Jab is for Clefable, which may or may not switch into this. I don't know. I don't really know Sarrfnar's playstyle. I do know he doesn't play Clefable as much as pretty much any person I've ever seen. The fact that he benches Clefable a lot makes me think he might actually not bring it, which would be awesome for us because Clefable is just a monster and I don't like dealing with it. But if he does bring it, we need to have a plan for it, and Poison Jab is step one of that plan. Ice Punch is our fourth move to hit, again, the 9 billion things his team is weak to. Nothing really else to say about that. Then max attack and max HP investment, just because there's no real reason to do anything else. So, Mega Venusaur is basically our main special wall. We do have Sludge Bomb, Leech Seed, Synthesis, and HP Fire alongside Chlorophyll this week instead of Overgrow like you normally see, because of course we're going as CharizardY, so being able to get that turn 1 Chlorophyll boost for the double speed if I don't happen to Mega Evolve early before then will be kind of nice for getting off a quick Sludge Bomb on some things like maybe Clefable and stuff like that. Leech Seed is good just overall simply because there's a lot of things that could potentially switch into this, namely Chestnut with Bulletproof, completely immune to Sludge Bomb and doesn't care that much about HP Fire. Um, Obviously, Leech Seed doesn't affect that, but other things such as perhaps Gliscor. Gliscor doesn't care about either of these moves. Tyrantrum doesn't care about either one of these moves. So there's a lot of things, like a Scavalier especially doesn't care about Sludge Bomb. There's a lot of things that could switch in that I'd rather just fire off an early Leech Seed, and if it turns out to be an unfavorable matchup, I can just pop out and heal something, and the switch, as it comes back out, takes the hit, and then Leech Seeds some of that damage back off. Synthesis, of course, for general HP recovery, and then HP Fire as a fourth move. I did debate quite a few times on what to bring as a fourth move. There's merit to a lot of things, and I wouldn't really I guess I wouldn't argue against anybody having personal preference towards a certain thing. Giga Drain, of course, for Floatzel, because our team is a little bit weak to it, with Mamoswine and Rhyperior both weak into it, and Fernape also weak to it. So it really relies on stuff like Venusaur and Latias to take out that Floatzel, as well as Rotom, which we'll get into in a minute. So there's definitely merit in bringing Giga Drain. There's definitely merit in bringing HP Ice. Um, but I went HP Fire because I only have one fire coverage move on the team in Infernape other than Mega Venusaur. And if he brings a Scavalier, which is possible, I absolutely need to have fire coverage for that, being Bug Steel type, and the fact that it only has one weakness, 2 fire, definitely would create a problem. It also happens to just be another answer to Doublade. This thing switches into all of Doublade's moves no problem and hits it with an HP Fire. It also switches into Regice, switches into Shiftry, and it gives me a move that I can actually hit Chestnut with, other than HP Ice. So HP Fire just has more synergy with the team as a whole, versus an individual set. An individual set might want HP Ice or something like that, or even on the ladder, a lot of the ladder ones use HP Fire. But even though his team is mostly weak to ice, I want fire for the team synergy versus the individual synergy. In terms of EVs, we are a full specially defensive set, with the last 4 in regular defense. Nothing really of note here. It is our main special wall simply because we have 2 physical walls. The second physical wall being Rotom Fan. Now, as I mentioned before, my team is incredibly weak to Floatzel, and I'm pretty sure Sarrfnar will know this. I do have Rhyperior, Rhydon, and Fernape, and Mamoswine all weak to water. So 4 water weaknesses on my team means that Floatzel is almost definitely coming, and I need an answer to that. Defensive Rotom Fan is actually pretty much an unstoppable defense against Floatzel. Will-O-Wisp shuts it down completely, barring any bulk up rush shenanigans, which I'm honestly not expecting. Thunder Wave is just a good spammable move against pretty much most of his team. Only Gliscor, Zapdos, and that's it, are immune to it. So only 2. Then we also have Air Slash and Thunderbolt as good stab coverage. Air Slash for the Paraflinch hacks, not necessarily as important as the fact that it gives me an easy answer to Chestnut, who is otherwise walled by Rotom Fan, blocks fighting, and grass being a flying type, so it negates all of its stab moves, and takes a lot of its extra coverage moves pretty well, and then it can just easily fire off a Will-O-Wisp and then Air Slash it down. So, like I said, full defensive EVs, 4 in speed, which is actually somewhat relevant, only because there are things on his team like Shiftry and stuff like that, which have 196 speed or 200 speed or 202 speed. Things like that are really close to that 209. So having that 4 extra points could be a factor. May not be, but I mean, if it is, then we're just mising extra speed. Doing that speed creep thing that I like to do sometimes. But Rhyperior, Venusaur, and Rotom are going to be our defensive threats. It forms actually a very good, very solid defensive core versus Sarrfnar's team. Now, Infernape this week is going to be a Scarf Infernape, simply because A, I want to outspeed Floatzel if it doesn't have Aqua Jet, and B, I want to outspeed other Scarf users. Things like Tyrantrum, for instance, which has very commonly been Scarf Tyrantrum on his team. Things like Shiftry, which could be a Scarf Shiftry. Things like even Chestnut really could be a Scarf or like a Banded Chestnut or something like that. I want to outspeed pretty much everything. Like, I don't want to deal with that stuff. Also of note is it outspeeds everything on his team, period, except for a Jolly Floatzel. If it's an Adamant Floatzel, I outspeed it as well, just right off the bat, even if it's Scarfed. If it's a Scarfed Adamant, I still outspeed it with my own Scarf, simply because an Adamant Floatzel only hits 329 max speed, and we are at 346. Now we are max speed 100% simply because I want to make sure that if he's kind of cutting it a little close on that Floatzel, say he's a Jolly, but he's kind of lowered the speed a little bit, simply to get that 10% boost on the speed, I want to still have a decent chance in being able to outspeed him. So, um, also of note that like the extra HP that I could take out of speed and put into HP doesn't really matter a whole ton. Yes, we are using Flare Blitz, but Infernape is not taking hits this week. I mean, aside from resisted hits, anything neutral or above is probably going to tear Infernape up. So we're really just going to be using it as a good, solid revenge killer and an answer to Charizard-Y with Rock Slide. So moves, we're using, of course, U-Turn for switch momentum on a choice item user, Flare Blitz in close combat for stabs, and then Rock Slide to hit that Charizard-Y. The ability of Blaze, of course, because we're not using fist moves. Nothing really to know here. It's a pretty standard physical Scarf set with the addition of Rock Slide over something like Mach Punch or something like that. Or a coverage move like, say, Thunder Punch or something like that. Close combat does actually more damage than Thunder Punch technically would against Floatzel, simply because of the stab. So, last on the list, we have Latias. I'll be honest, I talked with a lot of people during the week about running Vaporeon here. For those of you who paid attention to Sarrfnar's match with Dan, somebody who, the guy with Mega Sableye that we beat 6-0, I believe it was last week. Before he played us, he played Sarrfnar, and he actually brought a Rain Dance set on Suicune to completely negate the Sun on Charizard-Y. Now, I wanted to mimic that a little bit with Vaporeon and Hydration. I wanted something that could switch into those Thunder Waves that he would inevitably want to spam and be able to, Rain Dance, heal the status with Hydration, and possibly even negate the Sun. The problem I ran into this strategy while testing is that even though it sounds good on paper, it's extremely hard to pull off. I have to use Rain Dance either on the turn he's roosting or on the turn that he's coming in. So that way he can come in, activate Drought, I could Rain Dance to negate it and win the Weather War. But overall, winning the Weather War is going to be extremely tough. So once I took off Rain Dance and realized, well, okay, I can probably just put HP Rock instead, then I realized that, well, if I don't have Rain Dance, Scald is useless because Scald isn't going to do anything in rain, or anything in the sun, sorry. So I removed Scald, and at that point I'm like, well, why am I even bringing Vaporeon then? Latias does better defensively and offensively, has a bigger move pool and access to Healing Wish. So I made the switch to Latias, and I have tested a couple more times, and I was very happy with it. We are running Yachi Berry on Latias specifically to deal with an ice move coming from Floatzel or possibly Regice. We are running Draco Meteor, Thunderbolt, Ice Beam, and Healing Wish as moves. Draco Meteor obviously for stab, and then Bolt Beam coverage because Bolt Beam hits just about everything on his team neutrally. Healing Wish as a fourth move, simply because we want to have that reset button if something goes wrong, or say specifically for Infernape, we get him weak with, say, a couple Flare Blitz. We want to switch to Latias, Healing Wish him back to full, and let him go for another go around. So, in terms of EV spread, This is pretty similar to what you would see on a ladder, and that's simply because the speed tiers we're trying to beat are pretty similar to the things you see on ladder. We are hitting 330 speed, specifically to outspeed Zapdos. In this particular case, Zapdos with Intimidator hits 328, and for everybody who's used Latias more than a couple times knows that you can't get 329 speed on a Timid. It jumps straight from 328 to 330. So we're hitting 330 to meet the benchmark to outspeed Zapdos, hit it with a Draco Meteor or an Ice Beam, and then potentially kill it off. We do have max special attack investment and then the rest in HP bulk. Pretty standard for a Latias, like I said. This is almost identical to the EV spread of something that would be on the ladder, simply because ladder outspeeds most of the same things as Zapdos in the tier. Things of that same speed tier, I should say. So, overall, this is going to be our team. Like I said, Mamoswine is going to be doing so much work. Now I'm going to be trying to preserve him at the same time, so I'm not quite sure exactly how much work he's going to do, but I know every time I bring him out, he's going to be able to hit something like a mock truck. So that's the idea going into the match, is to use Mamoswine as basically the ultimate wall breaker against his team, and then using our defensive core of Rhyperior, Venusaur, and Rotom Fan to kind of pivot in and out as I need to until I can find an opening for Mamoswine or Infernape to punch another hole. So hopefully this works out. I would like it to work out simply because I'd like to get that 6-2. If we get a 4-0 or more, we will be 100% clinched for playoffs. I shouldn't say 100%. It would put us out of the range of simply losing and dropping ourselves down. A 4-0 or a higher would put us at a break point where we would be guaranteed 13 differential above people regardless of their winnings coming up after this week. So with that plus 13 differential, that would give us an opportunity to where even if we lost both our matches 6-0, we would still have a +1 differential over any of our remaining competition, which would mean they would have to win and win big in order to keep their differential higher so that they could pass us. So we're definitely looking to take a nice strong win here. If we do, that would be great. If we don't, not a big deal. We still have two matches left after this as well to get another win, but with our differential right now, we're at a +17 right now. Anything after this with a win is technically gravy because the next competition I think is at a +2 differential for 4th place. So we got a little bit of gap. We're basically looking to just extend it enough to where we can be guaranteed so we can just spend the rest of our season scouting our competition for the playoffs. So make sure you guys watch the match. As always, make sure you guys watch my opponent stuff as well, which will be linked below this video as well as the match video. I will see you guys for the match this week, and then after that I will see you guys next week as we take on Pablo of the, I think the Blackthorn Nidoqueens is his team. So, thanks again for watching, guys, and I'll see you guys next week.